Good morning and welcome back to Casual Camping and Outdoors. I'm out in the field today. I've got my camera set up on the bed of my pickup truck, and I'll probably be taking a hike on some of the trails out here in a little bit. And John isn't with me today. John has a sinus infection, so he stayed home. Today what I have is a collaboration between myself and a YouTube channel called JB Outdoors and More. Joe and I each got one of these knives, and we're going to each do a separate review and then kind of compare how he thinks about it and what I think about it. So let's take a look. This is a knife from a company called Marttiini, Marttiini. It's a company in Finland that makes these little knives, and it looks to me like this knife is designed to compete with the Mora. And if you're familiar at all with Mora knives, you know they make an outstanding little knife at an outstanding price. But let's take a look at this one today. Now, as I said, this knife does seem to be designed to compete with the Mora knives. Here we've got just a basic Mora knife. It's a very good knife. I've just got some paracord wrapped around the sheath. And as you can see, the knives are about the same size. Now with the Marttiini, you do have a little bit more of a sweep in that blade. The blade is a little bit wider down towards the end, so you've got more cutting edge and more belly for slicing. Now one big difference is that the Mora comes with this very cheap, and I don't like it, plastic sheath. I'll put that away. The Marttiini, however, or the Marttiini, or whatever, comes with a very nice leather sheath. It's a very attractive sheath that is real leather. It's nice and thick. It's got a belt loop here. It's got a buttonhole here if you were to attach it to that type of a attachment, and it fits very snug and very secure. It isn't going anywhere. And there's no rattle or shaking or any kind of noise whatsoever. It's a very nice fit, and I thought a very beautiful knife. Now we're not going to baton with this knife today because it's a small knife, but let's see how it might do in some other camp tasks. Now before we go any further, we have got to do what Brian Stevens calls the redneck sharp test. So I've shaved the raven so many times it's got some bare spots, so today we're going to shave the fish. I'm doing this. Oh wow, this thing has a wicked sharp edge, and that's factory edge. Like in all our knife reviews, we talk about 4 points: price, factory edge, factory sheath, and performance. The price on this little knife is about $20 on Amazon, and I'll leave a link in the description below. We've already taken a look at the factory sheath, which is a very nice, very simple leather sheath. The only thing I might add to this sheath might be a hole in the bottom for water drainage, and maybe even a fire steel loop or a ferro rod loop on one side or the other. It would not be impossible to do that yourself, but it'd be nice if buying the sheath with those options was available. Now let's talk about performance. We already see that it's shaving sharp. One camp task that you may use this little knife for might be food prep. And this knife just slices through food like nobody's business. You get very thin, very fine little slices, and it's just as sharp as it can be. You can almost see through that piece of orange. And we've got an old apple here. No problem. And again, very thin, very easy to slice in food prep. Now another camp task, pardon the use of my shirt as a napkin, might be a little bit of firewood prep. Like I said, I wouldn't baton with this knife. It's not very big, but it is made of pretty thick stock, so it would probably baton okay. Now this knife is labeled, pardon me again, as inox. So This is their own steel, but let's take a look and see how it'll do with a piece of fat wood. And it's just slicing through that fat wood, making tiny little shavings and curls. No problem at all. Move the fruit out of the way. I'm making a mess. That's what I'm doing. But those shavings, I don't know if you can see them on camera, but they are just paper thin and hair fine. So it slices through that fat wood with no problem. Now, the spine of the knife. One criticism I've always had about a basic Mora knife is that the edge of the spine is rounded. You cannot strike a ferro rod with that unless you get yourself a file and file you down a flat spot. Again, like I said before, I'm not real big on knives that I have to fix right out of the box. Now, the reason that they have that rounded edge, of course, is so you can put your thumb on there if you're pushing into your cut, and that sharp spine won't dig into your thumb. So it does serve a purpose. But I think that they could put a little flat spot, maybe right here on the end or even up towards the tip, where you could use it to strike a ferro rod without having to modify the knife itself. Now, the back edge on this Marttiini, I don't know. I'm not from Finland. I couldn't tell you how to say that. If you know, how about leaving it down in the comments so that I'm not making a complete fool of myself in future videos where I have this knife. But that edge feels relatively sharp. Let's see how well it'll scrape some fat wood. Now look at there. Just as fine a fat wood fuzz as you could want. Now, let's get us a ferro rod and see if it'll strike the ferro rod. Alright, so now we have our deer antler ferro rod. Somebody asked me the other day where I got this. To be honest, I believe I got it on eBay. It doesn't have a brand name on it. I don't remember it being advertised as any kind of a particular brand name. I just thought it was pretty because it is made out of a piece of real deer antler where they just drilled a hole and epoxied the ferro rod in place. But I have no idea what brand it is, but I've always liked this little ferro rod. But now let's see if we can get some sparks from the spine of this knife. Bingo. It is windy out here. Let's not burn the fire rod up, Paul. Well, there you go. That's one thing I already like better about this knife over the Mora, is the fact that it will scrape and it will strike a ferro rod. And at a $20 price point, again, the link is in the description, I don't see how you can go wrong. So, final thoughts. I really like this knife. I have to say that that is probably one of the most wickedly sharp factory edges on any knife I have ever bought. And I have knives from SE, K-Bar, Condor, and a dozen other manufacturers, and a lot of them have really excellent factory edges. But this one, being a Scandinavian grind, would be a very good for camping and bushcrafting, that type of thing. It's got a rubberized kind of an overmold handle. It is a stick tang. It's a rat tail tang similar to a Mora, so you'll get similar performance as far as cutting and like that. But again, I much prefer this outstanding little leather sheath. I do wish it would come in colors other than black. I'd love to have one in old leather brown, and I'd like to see these handles come out in other colors. The only other criticism that I might give is they've got here, let me see if I can show you, this advertisement. I'm not a particular fan of knives deciding that they're also going to be a billboard for their brand. You know, I know that most major knife manufacturers out there will put some kind of branding or some kind of logo on their knife, but this big, wide, and that's as big as the tip of my thumb, and it's only on one side, on the handle, I'd like to see that go away. I may take a closer look at that later and see if that's a sticker or something I can pry off of there. They've also got their name on the blade where it says Marttiini or Marttiini, Finland. And then the other side of the blade altogether is blank. But I think that's just an unnecessary bit of advertising, but it's a small criticism and it's completely subjective to what you like or don't like. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the knife's performance whatsoever. So it's made out of what seems to be a decent steel. It's an inox knife. It's got a Scandinavian Scandinavian grind. I don't do much editing on these videos, so when I tend to trip over my own tongue, you're going to see it. You can make fun of me down in the comments. I love that big belly there along the edge of that knife. That makes for great slicing, and it does really well for some of your more basic camp tasks. Who knows, I might even try to baton with this sometime in the future on a very small piece of wood, but it being a stick tang and being a relatively small knife with a 3.5-inch blade, that's not really what it's made for, and I try to stick with what a knife is made for in testing its performance. Taking a small knife and tearing it up on a giant log and saying the knife sucks because it won't baton a tree for a small knife, I don't think that's very fair in reviewing its performance and how capable of a little knife it is. I'd much rather show you what it will do for its intended tasks. So as always, thanks for joining us on Casual Camping and Outdoors, and we'll see you in the next one. Oh, and Joe, I'm anxious to see what you think. I hope you like it as much as I did. Oh, and by the way, brown spots or not, I'm eating this apple. That's good.